The biggest surprise at the 2026 Indian Wells Tennis Tournament will be, you'll have to subscribe to find out. Well, we'll actually, if you just wait to the end of the video, we'll tell you. But if you do subscribe, that would be very helpful to us. Welcome to the All Surface Show. I am David E.J. Berger. With me, once again, is my main man in Melbourne, Mr. Ace Previews himself. Steve, welcome in. How are you on this lovely day before, they call it the Fifth Slam? Welcome in.
Is it the Fifth Slam?
I don't know. It's definitely the biggest, one of the bigger events. A lot of, North American ignorance. People say this is the real start to the tennis season. There's a lot of things said about it that I think is just a really fun event that continues to grow, much to my chagrin, as I was priced out of the first weekend.
Getting priced out. Well, you should enjoy that. You've got one Mr. Tiley who's headed over to your neck of the woods over in the US after his time at the Australian Open. No, I'm good. It's exciting to have everyone come back together into a big tournament, have the men's and women's run side by side. Should be a good 4-week block between here and Miami. So excited to see the main draw get underway.
Absolutely. I could go. It's just my family of four. Tough, especially with young children who can hang for about 3 points, as was the case this weekend when I went to the W35 Arcadia finale with them, the final versus Akasha Arobo and Thea Froden. Good final, 3 sets. Froden said afterwards in the loss, told the crowd she's been clocked at 118 miles per hour on her first serve before. Pretty good. Arobo, they talked about her on her way to Indian Wells, and she picked up a round 1 win yesterday in qualifying. Now she has to back up yet another 3-set match versus the red hot Taylor Townsend. So we'll see how that goes for her today. But I don't know. I feel like she's being undervalued at the moment in the betting markets, but we'll see.
How did you find it? The low level, the setup, the access?
It was great. It's over at an iTennis center here in California. So, it is a proper tennis facility. I wanted to watch my girl Latova versus Froden. I went over there on the day before in the semis. I thought they'd be on the main pavilion, which the main pavilion was pretty nice, free event, and there were shaded stands to watch. But Latova and Froden were on it was akin to like Rucker Park in New York. It was, a rust-laden fence blocking my view. There was no proper seating area for that match, unfortunately. But the actual main court was pretty good. I watched a couple matches there over the weekend, and it was a lot of fun. And they had a sponsorship with a water company, and they're handing out free water. And so, there was some good vibes. And Steve, you'll be interested to know, I don't know if you know this, but Eva Jovic won this event last year. Now she's 19 in the world. So we'll see what, no pressure on Arobo as the champ this year.
No pressure at all.
But yeah, no, I'm going to put that on my calendar to go. I put some reels up on our shorts feed, so people got to see a little bit of the action there. Thanks everyone that viewed those and have subscribed since. Picked up some subscribers for that. I'm heading to Indian Wells at some point. We'll TBD, and I'll have some content for us as well. So everyone, this is my annoying thing. Well, because there's a lot to talk about going on in the world, going on in tennis, but a lot of boots on the ground out there, Steve, and maybe we put a moratorium on that freezing at the moment with everything going on.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah. So, let's get into Indian Wells, and then we'll talk trash about the ATP and what's happening with their tournament that's now canceled in the war zone. But the big headline, I think, is Yannick Sinner returns to the desert, and now we have a 2-man race once again for a big tournament between Alcaraz and Sinner. Let me bring up the draw. They would meet in the final, which I think.
Just while you are bringing that up, just a question for you. How do you feel about these 96-man draws? With the top 32 players getting a round 1 bye.
Well, content-wise, I like it as a content creator now. Quality-wise, I know where you're driving towards, and I think I will definitely give you the floor in terms of the criticism you're about to heap, I think.
I think it's just more if you're going to lead off with Indian Wales being the one that you have a televised draw ceremony and you work through all that. It's just hard to get too excited when you've got the top 32 with a bye round 1 and we're not really sure who they're going to face yet. I like round 1 in terms of, because I like tennis of all levels, but I don't know. I just feel like having it as what are you going to call it? A 12-day tournament, or it's a 2-week tournament with qualifying, and then potentially having the top 32 not play almost the entire first week. I don't know. I feel like I'm going to come back to this a couple of times this year and say that these tournaments feel a little bit diluted and stretched. I mean, I'm happy to hear the other side in terms of welfare and management and those sort of things, but it's I just feel like it's hard to get momentum potentially with some of these.
Well, to your credit, and I'll speak more to the men's side, which I'm, full transparency, more familiar with. But even some names you would think would have been in the qualifying draw were not there. Some young guns, MBK from Norway, Justin Engel from Germany. Some of these, guys that are making waves in the lower levels are continuing to do that this week. That kind of would have pumped up the excitement for these earlier rounds, just in terms of, the opportunity to see someone on the come up. But yeah, it is a lot of a 250 feel in the opening round, if not Challenger 175-ish. Although not the Phoenix 175, which is pretty loaded.
Yeah, well, yes. That's almost more loaded than the first week of Indian Wales.
This is true. And with the scheduling, I was talking about this with John. I think the scheduling for Stadium 1 is going to be pretty interesting. With Djokovic back, center back, and Sabalenka, Swiatek, a lot of headliners for one stadium. And so I think order of play is going to be pretty interesting for tournament schedulers. Got an opening round between Stefanos Tsitsipas and Denis Shapovalov on the men's side. Where is that going to get scheduled? Tsitsipas was on court 1 last year versus Berrettini. I don't know that he's drawn 1 again, man.
I think it's going to be a bit of a stretch. Just a little bit. Interesting. It does feel like a little bit of a, there has now been a changing of the guard, seeing these two play round 1 here. It'll be interesting to see if either of them can kind of claw their way back into these seeding spots later in the Masters 1000 calendar, or in the Grand Slam calendar too.
Oh yes, some people have tumbled. Let's talk about Carlos Alcaraz's quarter, which I think unfortunate draw for a few players. Alex de Minaur gets Alcaraz again. Cam Norrie, who is a past champion, he now has to face Alcaraz potentially down the line. Casper Ruud, I think, is someone who has made the quarterfinals before, and he's had successful Sunshine doubles. Now he has to face the buzzsaw that is the Spaniard, Alex Bublik. This guy is a 10 seed, top 10 player in the world. I think he's up against Alcaraz. So unfortunate draw for some of these guys, especially considering that, the wide open quarter that is the Musetti Zverev one in my mind. Unlucky for the chances of some of these players, Steve.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, for Bublik and Demonor and the like, I was still solid in terms of, points, prize money, and kind of moving forward. But yeah, you're really at this point now, I think, when you're on the men's tour, you're looking at the draw. Your first question is, have I avoided Alcaraz? And the second question is, have I avoided Sinner? So these guys aren't going to be particularly thrilled by it, but I think there's some potentially interesting matches, I think, through the first, week or so of the tournament. Potentially Seb Quarter against Demon or round 2 is one that probably stands out. Bublik probably against anyone, just because he feels like he's just at this point now where he's at the top, and now is it a fatigue of playing a lot of tennis because he's been winning, as opposed to, he's obviously realized that winning is fun and that there's a lot that you can do to help kind of support that. But, his level the last couple of tournaments probably hasn't married up with what we saw in the back end of last year. So interesting kind of matchups here, but yeah, it's going to be hard, I think, for anyone to make their way past the guy sitting at the top with the big number 1 next to his name.
Yeah, if it's chalky, a Bublik Luciano Darderi matchup, pretty enticing. Darderi wins another 250 over the weekend to continue to solidify he is the new Casper Ruud narrative. Another watered down clay 250 at that. Would have been a nice moment to really pump up that narrative for me. I mean, had he just been up a little bit more in the draw, as Ruud is in this portion, but not in his section. Would have been a real feather in my cap to pump up that narrative. But
it still might happen.
Kind of a banger opening round match between Michael Zhang and Archer Cazot. Contrast in styles there. That's a really fun opening round match in this portion of the draw.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's this section is, as you say, you think that Alcaraz is going to do what Alcaraz normally does. You have to look to these other pockets to find what can potentially be a matchups to get excited about. But yeah, there's certainly a couple there, I think, that are certainly going to be ones to watch.
Let's keep it moving to the Novak Djokovic portion. Djokovic last 2 years has had surprise exits to Luca Nardi and Botic van de Zandschulp. Now if he gets GMP round 2, coin flip sets, upset alert maybe. I don't know. Hubie Hurkacz now has to play an opening round. He's unseeded. He draws Kova. I think Hubie Hurkacz is a real question mark. His service game is lost, but if he finds it, he is someone who's had success at both this and obviously won Miami. So gonna be a real interesting few weeks for Hubie Hurkacz in his 2026 season. If he rounds into form, I think he can be a threat, but if not, man, could be dark days ahead if his service game is going to fail him, Steve.
Yeah, if it doesn't click again, he's out round 1 against Kova. Like that's just the state of, I think, the men's game at the moment, is that you can't just, if you're a big player returning from injury, you can't just afford to kind of roll in at, below 100% and just assume things are going to build unless you are a particular handful, I think, of players. So I think it's going to be tough there. It's going to be interesting, I think, to see, we're probably seeing now more variation in terms of best and the worst level from Novak, just given, where he's at in his career. Could he make his way through this entire section? Absolutely. Could he be out before the first weekend. It doesn't feel like it's as unlikely as it probably has been in years gone by. So yeah, the couple of players there. Obviously, we've got Jack Draper, who's made his return back. Got a few points to defend.
Just a few.
Just a few. So interesting to see there. And yeah, as I said, there's a list of seeded players there whose best tennis is pretty good. And we've got a handful of players. We've got Mikkelsen, Jadar, Marijan, as I said, Hubie before GMP. There's a few unseeded players there who might be able to surprise.
There's a lot of players in this portion of the draw in this quarter with points to defend. Medvedev, I believe, made the semifinals last year. Taylor Fritz made the quarterfinals. Francisco Cerundolo, who he has to do 50, so a little. And Med obviously has a couple titles, so those guys kind of early defense in terms of winning other tournaments. But Dolo, a surprise quarterfinalist last year as well. So we have some guys who were in the horse race to the finish last year, all stacked up in this quarter.
And I guess the other thing to consider as well is, on 2026 form, it's nice to see Sebastian Baez back on hard court, where he's most familiar and comfortable.
Yeah,
so
well, it's a good thing.
He was too.
Good thing he had those early hard court victories, because the Golden Swing was not as kind as usual to him.
Looking at this draw and the matchup and how it shapes out, I mean, you mentioned before about a number of those players that you were surprised to not see in qualifying, and I wonder if it is pretty strategic in terms of if you make it if you lose in the second round at Indian Wells, you get 25 ranking points, and you're guaranteed to cop a top 32 player in the second round. Like, you're going to be up against it to one qualify, make it through, and make it past 2 rounds. You may as well go to a challenger that's perhaps a little bit weaker and notch a couple of wins. I can kind of understand it a little bit.
I think it goes both ways, because obviously points matter, but exposure at this in this day and age, I think, goes a lot further, and you're not going to get that grinding this week on the challenger scene. I mean, one really exciting match, even in qualifying, puts you on a radar with people who have not seen you before, and I think that is incredibly valuable in today's game from a monetary standpoint, outside of just what you can earn on the tour on the court itself. So, I'm not in anyone's team or a camp or professional, so everyone has more expertise in that. With me, I'm just saying this is the hub, and I do feel like it could have been beneficial to be there as well. Interesting opening round match between Tabilo and Rafa Hodar. Man, that's actually a really great opening round match.
Could be over in 70 minutes, or could be over in 3.5 hours. It's a real spectrum match, kind of, that one of it could. There's a number of different outcomes there that we could be seeing between those two on a hard court.
All right, let's keep it moving so we can also include some women's draw talk and go down to the Musetti-Zverev quarter, which I think is the most wide open. Archer Feast, I think, is an extreme dark horse in this draw. He beat Musetti at this event last year. Musetti's obviously hasn't played since the Australian Open. His health is a question mark. That said, I don't count this guy out anymore, and these are really great conditions for him on a hard court. Even the ball change, I think, should benefit him. Someone who can really struggle to get first in. We've seen that number tick up with the ball change so far. The ace is way up. The ball seems easier to hit for players. So, outside of the obvious negatives in terms of coming back from injury, a lot of positives for the Italian. But again, early challenge with Feast before we even reach round 4. Brutal. But, I have Alex Zverev, who just went down. I mean, Alex Zverev spent 2 weeks in Acapulco to win one match.
Mm-hmm. And now might find himself against Matteo Berrettini first up at Indian Wells.
Well, not sure about
Maybe.
not sure that's as insurmountable as I think you're billing it. A redlining day from Berrettini. I just mentioned the ball change. People are slamming first in. You know, I think it was a mistake for Berrettini to play the golden swing. I was vocal about that on Match Point 9 show. I think we talked about it some here. I don't know that really worked out for him the way he thought it might. He was on the verge, of making the semifinals of a 500. Okay, didn't get there. Cobley wins Acapulco. He has some ugly losses here at this event. He's never won a match here, so we'll see what he gets as the 5th seed. And then, man, 2 guys who are going through it round 1. Jensen Brooksby did pick up a couple wins in Dubai, but we have not seen a lot from the American in his return, since Houston of last year. I guess he had the run in Mallorca as a lucky loser. But Alexei Poprin, also your countryman, going through it. So unfortunate draw for both those guys who could use a win. And a lot of desperation on both sides there, I feel.
Yeah, absolutely. And it feels it's almost, I think this section, as you said, because you take Alcaraz out, you take Sinner out, but you look at it, but there are so many, I don't know, I guess there's so many potential 4th round and quarterfinal matchups there, but it almost feels like none of them would be a surprise. Like, I feel like they've all got, particularly that seeded batch, they've certainly all got potential. Like, you could look at it and go, yeah, Fils, Zverev, yeah, not a shock. Kaboli seems to either get absolutely obliterated round 1 or win a tournament. So there's real no in between there. That's probably the best example I can give for him at the moment. But yeah, I think when you look at it, maybe whoever comes out of that Rublev, Auger, Aliassime kind of pocket might be able to make a bit of a deeper run if there's still some question marks around Mazzetti, obviously coming back, and Fils relatively soon into his comeback. It might be an upset there. I think, Zverev, credit to Zverev for kind of playing out the doubles and winning the doubles title last week. But yeah, we need to, I think, if you're serious about him kind of bridging the gap to the top 2, these are the types of draws he needs to be at least in the final 4 of.
Not sure what I expect from FAA on these slower courts. I believe he's made the round 4 at least in the past. But yeah, Monfils with his final Indian Wells. I mean, it's over. It really is over for Monfils. I think he has 1 week left. I just don't know when that's going to happen, Steve. He really was up against it. Here's what I'll say about the Acapulco match. Valentin Vachereau was literally insane until the last 2 sets against Nakashima. So tough to, Monfils did kind of gas out in the tail end of that second set versus Double V. But Vachereau was really good in that match. Really good. He hit a 9.2 rating in the first set against Nakashima before going full pumpkin. So good chance for fans to catch Monfils one last time in the desert. And I don't have a lot of expectations for him, even in the opening round, no matter who the qualifier is.
Question without notice. You sit on Monfils getting a wild card and Wawrinka not getting a wild card.
It's a good point. The form of Wawrinka definitely deserved it more. And Wawrinka was competitive, a couple years ago? He pushed Runa. Yeah, that's a tough one. That is a tough one. I think Monfils gets it because of Svitolina, to be honest. Yeah, he's going to be there anyway.
I feel like you can genuinely say that it's Monfils' last time. I just have this thing in the back of my head that if Stan is ranked high enough, he's going to roll into the start of 2027. Like
It wouldn't shock me.
I don't think that's going to be a hard stop. I think it was kind of set up as I don't know, if I'm ranked 280 in the world and haven't won with any of my wild cards, you know, it wouldn't be a surprise if he's going to get all those wild cards this year. He's going to be sitting in the top 100, and you're telling me he's going to knock back, you know, potentially a couple of $100,000 for United Cup and Australian Open to kind of roll into another year. Maybe it's down that path, but yeah, I just thought that was maybe an interesting decision.
I also wonder if he draws Stadium 2, which he's played on a lot over the last few years, if we see an uptick in performance with the crowd at his back for Mumpies. This one is annoying for me, Steve. As I mentioned, Ben Shelton drawing the Yonex center corner. Now he is definitely not winning Indian Wells. Frustrating as an American. I'm not even like a big home soil American tennis. You know, I bleed red, white, and blue. It's just, you know, I like Ben. I want to see Ben win for America. And it's not happening in this tournament.
Look, it's going to be tough. I actually, as a non-American, I'm curious to see Shelton versus Lerner.
That could be really good too. The thing of it is too for Yonex Center, you know, as the tournament rolls on, it's going to be pushing 100 degrees Fahrenheit in the second week. So we'll see how Yonex Center handles that. We'll see what scheduling brings, but we do have the door open for extremely brutal conditions on court for Yonex Center, who was not held up even as recently as in January, where he nearly shockingly lost to Elliot Spitzeri because of the heat before he was bailed out with the roof coming on. And we shall see. Not the toughest. I mean, this is a list of guys he has not only beaten but trounced, except for Menchik, who just got the win. But I don't really like. Alcaraz lost to Leheshka in Doha last February. Now, he didn't win Indian Wells, okay, but then he won a couple slams after that, Steve. So tough for me to really knock center for that loss to Menchik. So, I mean, Menchik backed that up by losing to Feast. The round after that, he lost to Greek Spore the next week. Not sure. So
I think looking at this section, there's a couple of interesting round ones to probably keep an eye on. I mean, you know, from your American perspective, you're guaranteed an All-American round 2 with the winner of Opelka and Quinn facing Shelton. Fonseca versus your man Raf. For a chance to play KK.
Yeah, Coleon. No, I think this is a really good opportunity to back. If I got to see, do we have the odds out for that actually, Steve? Not that we're a betting show, but
I think these are the type of matches I think that are going to really hold up. I think the first couple of days of the main draw that they're going to really lean into that. They're going to lean into Tsitsipas, Chapo. Like there's a few matches there that are really going to. I think the tournament's going to need them to be pretty interesting / competitive. I think to kind of build some momentum coming into round 2. But yeah, certainly it's going to be an interesting kind of 12 days, I think, of main draw action. Do we see Alcaraz center in the final, or are we going down a different path?
I think we revert back to the mean and we do see them in the final. Yes.
It was fun while it lasted.
I think Alcaraz, his best surface is medium slow hard courts. So I'm more bullish always on Alcaraz, but I'm especially bullish on him making the final here. Good on Draper. I actually think that Jack Draper run last year going a bit under the radar in terms of his quality, and probably needs a little bit more praise for the resume that he had en route to that title, including beating Alcaraz, including beating Fritz, a couple of past champions. Sinner, we shall see. But I do think we see the new two back in the final. All right, let's go to the women's side. Let me go to the top half. This first quarter with Sabalenka is really, really fun. I mean, talk about headliners. Sabalenka, Raducanu, Osaka, Anisimova, who's been red hot the last year, and Boku. Even Djokovic is making a name for herself. Kalinskaya. I mean, this is a blockbuster quarter. If you could just buy tickets to one quarter, this is I think this is a good one just to sit and watch play out.
Yeah, and even some of the unseeded players, Alicia Parks can certainly bring a high level at times. Potentially with the crowd at her back, which would be a very different feeling to what the Australian Open against Alexiala. She's probably looking forward to having a bit more crowd support here. Eva Lees coming back from an injury. McCartney Kessler. There's a few interesting unseeded players there too. But yeah, as you said, the seed portion is stacked. Djokovic versus Osaka would be a really interesting third round. Winner probably. I don't think I'm saying anything too out of turn by saying winner probably facing Sabalenka in the fourth round, and Raducanu's first outing for Uniqlo. I think that was the big move and the big shift for Emma. So yeah, look, some big names there. I think if you're the tournament organizer, you're probably hoping for Sabalenka versus Anisimova, but I think you'd settle for a whole range of combinations out of this portion in terms of who would meet in the quarters.
Absolutely. Let's go to the golf. Iala, Paulini quarter. I forgot about Iala in that conversation about who gets court one, because how are you putting Iala anywhere but the stadium one? Man, they got it. They are. This is a non-betting podcast, but friendly advice to bettors out there: check out the order of play, man, because it's going to greatly impact this week. In fact, we can talk about it in terms of how this is going to play out, because day-night session play completely different, and there's going to be a lot of jockeying with some of these players in their profiles. I mean, how can you put Alexiala anywhere but Stadium 1 at this point? That would be insane. Which means someone that probably would get a night match on Stadium 1 or a day match is not going to be on Stadium 2 somewhere. Interesting here, Steve. This one, I think, I mean, it's definitely Goff's to lose, but I think that, wide open, true WTA style here for someone to be in the semifinals.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think, there are a lot of players there who are, again, capable in their day. And as you said, it is quite wide open. Coco could rock up and step on court against Bianca Andreescu in round 2, for her first match. So there's some potential there from the start that things are going to get tricky. Of those names there, and look, he did ask at the start, who might be the surprise. Maybe it's a Clara Towson. She'd have to face Putintseva or Badosa in her first match, but it's that bottom section, that bottom half of this quarter feels very, very wide open. Just the way that Paolini's playing, she's really struggled since the Australian Open to get any sort of continuity in the singles and the doubles. That maybe Clara might be able to pop through there. Where she could be able to win a power battle against Alexandrova if they were to meet. But yeah, I'd say she's maybe one to keep an eye on as a sneaky chance to make a bit of a deep run here.
All right, let's keep it moving to the bottom half. Pegula, who has been all over social media for her Incredibles, the Avatar snafu, and then they're continuing the joke this week with some more social media posts. Such a great ambassador for the game, great character, Pegula. Rybakina, I saw she was doing some stuff with her brand Yonex this week. Navarro, what is going on with her? I don't know. I don't want to be on another one of these. Fading her again, but definitely vulnerable seed.
Venus Williams back as a wild card.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I honestly did she have one here last year? Was this where she got one last year and she won the first set? Or is that, I forget what, or maybe that was over the summer.
There was one later in the year where she beat Stearns.
Yes, that was it. Okay.
Yeah.
Madison Keys, I think, is looking for a 2026 pop that's yet to come yet. Penko, obviously, always a character. With conditions,
we may get a rematch of the Belgium-Switzerland United Cup again with Mertens and Bencic.
That would be really fun. Kostiak, I think, always a wild card because I don't feel like her ceiling has been reached yet, and but we'll be up against the Australian Open champion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Madison Keys would be looking for a better performance. I think it was she lost to Alex Ayala. That was a bit of a breakthrough kind of result, I think, for Ayala overall. I think Keys coming as a defending Australian Open champ. It was obviously a little bit hard to maintain that momentum, but yeah, again, I feel like this section feels like one of those. We've seen some strong performances from Jess Pegula. We've seen some consistency, and now can this turn into then, now an Indian Wells semi-final or an Indian Wells final or even title? I think she's well placed in terms of the tennis that she's playing. It's just about being able to produce and maintain a level somewhat near her best. Rybakina is obviously going to be a tough opponent for anyone, but as you said, the weather can be a little bit hot. Rybakina's best probably beats anyone on the tour, but she can be a little bit prone sometimes to having an off set or an off little patch. So yeah, I'm fascinated to see where Pegula can go with this fortnight.
I don't think Baptiste would be a walkover for Rybakina in round 2.
No, and I think it would certainly shape as an interesting one. But then alternatively, I can also see Baptiste losing round 1 to Arago. So it's and I think that's where the players can break it. Like Pegula pushing up towards kind of the top 4, top 3, is that she needs to get through these early rounds of these tournaments. She needs to not lose to Valentova or Vekic or Ostapenko. She needs to be able to consistently be making the quarters in these type of tournaments. And from what we've seen recently, it seems like she's heading more in that direction. But who knows? She could get a peak Ostapenko round 3, and we could be talking about Ostapenko pulling a title out of nowhere. You never really know with some of these players. But I'm most interested, I think, in keeping an eye on Pegula.
The last quarter is headlined by your reigning champion and Mira Andreev. Iga Swiatek has some Indian Wells trophies, and she is your 2 seed. Leylah Fernandez is in the mix here, North American hard quarter. And then we have the Queen as well. Sakari upended Iga earlier this year, potential rematch. Svitolina has a title recently. She's playing well.
Peyton Stearns has a title from last week. Could potentially face Andreeva in the second round. Jennifer Brady's making the comeback as a wild card. Some interesting stories here. I'm probably not going to try and predict who's going to win their way out of this quarter, but it's hard to not be impressed by Alina Svitolina making her way back into the top 10. Mahova sitting at 13 in the world, having had a largely injury interrupted last couple of years. I think there's some really this is a kind of section where there's a lot of potential. It's just whether the performances live up to that. But I'd like to see Jennifer Brady make somewhat of a successful WTA level. I know she's played some lower level tennis, but to see her back at the top level is encouraging after what's been a pretty brutal couple of years for her injury-wise.
I would venture to say friendlier draw for Mira versus Iga, with Swiatek potentially playing Zhang. Not was that in the round of 16. I mean, sure, Svitolina could be tricky on her day versus Andrea, but I mean, match on her racket, I would think. And who knows if Svitolina even gets there. Court time could add up for her.
Yeah, and it's really hard to know with Iga, I think, in terms of, you've rewind a number of years and you just knew when Iga turned up, it was a bit of a, what you see is what you get. And it's a pretty consistent, pretty dominant performance. Whereas now I think, that push to be more aggressive, to be able to match it with a lot of the other names who are at the top of these draws, I feel like that just leads her to being a little bit vulnerable, I think, early in these tournaments to an off performance from her to someone needing someone else to play a lights out performance to beat her. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how far Iga goes across the fortnight. But yeah, there's certainly some interesting names here that we'll be keeping an eye on.
All right. Well, now we've reached the portion of the show in which we can bash the ATP for this handling of the challenger in the middle of a war zone. And now there's emails going. I mean, who knows if this is a confirmed email, but they're offering, $5,000 to eject out of the tournament. I don't know why organizers had this tournament in the first place. Incredible situation developing. Even they didn't really know it would happen with Dubai, but that doesn't seem to be being handled very well either. It's just a mess, Steve.
Yeah. So just before we've recorded this, obviously, Ilya Ivashka's posted I think it was on his Instagram, what was an email that looks like it's the tournament organizers asking or, seeing if anyone's interested in, finding their way out of the country for, was it 5,000 euro? Anyway, it was a large amount of money. It hasn't been verified at the time of us for one of any note, from the ATP or ATP Challenger kind of space. That's not to say it hasn't been picked up by a number of people. It's just the way of social media. I think in 2026 is you see a story and people want to kind of quickly get onto it and, make it theirs.
Of course, Steve.
Yeah, if you click into the so Jose's gone with it here. If you click onto that one there. So this is the email that came out. Firstly, for me, it's probably suspicious that the spelt players wrong. I don't know if that's just me and my email spam.
It's not spelled wrong. It's a very hip way to spell it. I don't know how cool you are, Steve.
True. But so there's two ways now that there's two outcomes, I think, out of this story, and neither of them are good. One is that this is a legitimate email and the ATP trying to get 5,000 euro per person. So rarely does anyone travel by themselves to these tournaments. You're taking team members as well, or family or whoever. So keep that in mind when it's a 5,000 euro per person. Two, the ATP actively, they could have cancelled this tournament days ago, well before people found their way to the tournament to be able to play. So
yes,
there's no kind of assuming any responsibility of that. The other side of the coin is that this, and it does read, the no reply. It reads a bit like a scam that someone's, and you almost hope it is a scam in some way, but it's a scam that no one falls for. Like, it's a really fine line in terms of this story of, it either makes the ATP look more horrific than it already does, or we've now got, unfounded kind of scam emails being actively reported as being legitimate by people with large followings on social media. And that probably brings a question into it as well of,
well,
my
real or
first
not,
thought when you look at that is that you go, well, is someone going to verify that, or are we just going to go with, someone has got access to a list of players' details and stuff and has, socially engineered a way to be able to get a couple of lots of, because, nothing screams legitimate like join my WhatsApp to me 5,000 euros. Like, you just need to kind of take a step back maybe and go, well, is this legitimate? Or just wait to see if it is legitimate. Like, it's one of those things of, now, if it wasn't, we're going to see more of them now, because look at the traction that this has got in a matter of minutes, basically, since Ivashka's posted it. It kind of highlights, I think, where we're at in terms of, one, even just the thing. I posted, I think, when the players had to run off the court yesterday. Like, this, the ATP, or the tennis just can't get sometimes. Like, it's that real main character syndrome. The amount of stuff I've seen over the last couple of days where the focus of the conversation has been, how do high-level tennis players get from Dubai to Indian Wells, as opposed to like general welfare and safety of humans. And our co-host John's been over there in Dubai. It doesn't sound like it's been a particularly enjoyable period of time for anyone there. But it's the conversation of what's a couple of people who can normally charter a flight, who could comfortably miss Indian Wells and not feel its impact in any way. How is the bigger story that being them? Like, I just don't get it.
Why they held that tournament, I have no idea. That was I don't know if they were like, and granted, it's kind of a completely different situation, but there was a little bit unrest, not too far from Acapulco, but they rolled the dice with Acapulco and that went fine. So I don't know if they were like, we can get away with it type of thing. But still ridiculous and pretty bleak. Especially when you consider, the NFL, just all the players deciding to walk away from that game with DeMar Hamlin. Like, some humanity shown in other sports that seems to be lacking.
I actually think the ATP was very lucky that Greek Sport hurt his hamstring in the semi-final, and that final didn't go ahead. I think. Point.
Well, John thinks that if that all didn't go down, Greek Sport would have played.
Yeah, it just, I just wish we could go back 2 weeks when the biggest tennis issue was them not serving meat at Acapulco in the players area. Like, that was such a simpler time, and then you sit there and you follow the tour year round, and you try and support and defend what they do, and then something like this comes along, and you sit there and you go, like, why? Like, who's sitting in a room going, hey, let's bring hundreds of people to Dubai for the next 2 weeks to play 2 challenger tournaments while there's missiles being intercepted overhead. Like, and that it's difficult to even, most of the airspace was closed for people trying to get there. So people have then fought their way to get there because there's a tournament on. As we said, people have skipped going to Indian Wells to play these tournaments to be able to kind of generate some ranking points to be able to kind of move their way up. Of course, not just going to go, oh, I'm just going to take a pause for 2 weeks. They're not probably able to enter into other tournaments. It just the people who are in charge just make it really hard to support the sport as people who enjoy the sport. Well, that's my thoughts anyway. I don't want to speak for anyone else, but as soon as I saw this happen, and you see the footage of the players running off yesterday in the middle of qualifying, it's like,
it's just an exhausting situation at a moment on your sports calendar that's supposed to be a celebration. So unfortunate and avoidable.
That's the thing, I think, is how avoidable it is. There's so many tennis courts and so many players. You can push it back to later in the year. You can, find alternate arrangements at short notice. And like, I hope that email was fake, but it also, if it is fake, it probably highlights a greater need for maybe just the people being a little bit more attentive to, I guess, the finer details. If it's not fake and it then gets verified, well, that's a completely other story for another show, I think, because that's just diabolical.
All right, well, let's round the episode out with a positive and complete my tease. The biggest surprise for the Indian Wells in tournament in 2026, I believe someone not named Sabalenka, Goff, Swiatek, Rybakina, Andreev will win the women's edition of the tournament.
I'll go with Clara Towson.
Oh, from the top rope, Steve. Long shot.
We're going to go for something a little bit different. Hey, I'm the person who comes on here every week and says that Davidovich Fokina is going to win a tournament. So, like, this is hardly like off brand.
By the way, we totally failed. Wet bulb watch was the bulb was too wet a little in recent days. They had to stop play because of heat rules.
We did see that. We saw that in South America as well. With it wasn't particularly hot temperature wise, but yeah, it's the combination. It's the humidity that gets you with the wet bulb.
You got to check how wet that thing is, man.
Yeah, I will say while we're on Outland comments, you don't think it'll happen, but I reckon Ben Shelton can find himself in the final and potentially win Indian Wells.
Oh, let's go, Steve. Let's go. I that would be exciting, fresh, new, different. Would love it. All right, we've reached the conclusion of this episode. Do subscribe for more episodes of the All Surface Show and our content in general. I'll have some reels and some other stuff for Indian Wells coming up, some exclusive coverage as I'll be there soon enough. Until next time, see you in the court.